Shuhei Hisagi has transformed from a supporting character into a fan-favorite protagonist. Hisagi is incredibly loyal to his former mentor and captain Kaname Tōsen. As a character, Hisagi has a tragic but yet redemptive story arc which leads him to fully comprehend the true essence of his Zanpakutō Kazeshini. He suffers from fear which is often born from our deepest insecurities, and this is a central theme within Hisagi's journey. As a warrior, Hisagi wrestles with his own fears, and the philosophy that Tōsen imparted to him about embracing this fear, which is reflected in his Zanpakutō Kazeshini, which symbolizes the lasting influence of his former captain. In this video, I'm going to be deep diving into Hisagi's character development from his early days in the series to his growth by the end of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, as well as the pivotal lead role that he plays within the Can't Be Your Own World light novels. These light novels offer us unique insights into his relationship with his Zanpakutō. In Can't Be Your Own World, Hisagi's repeated refusal to give in to Kazeshini's demand for more blood highlights an aspect of himself that he is reluctant to confront. Be sure to stick around until the very end of this video, as I'll be uncovering the true meaning behind Hisagi's Bankai, as well as revealing the amazing power that it possesses. So without further delay, here is my complete breakdown and analysis of Shuhei Hisagi's character. Before the video begins, only 20% of the people who actually watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. Shuhei Hisagi serves as the lieutenant of the 9th Division, currently working under Captain Kensei Muguruma. Following the betrayal of his former captain Kaname Tōsen, Hisagi took on the role of acting captain of his division, demonstrating his leadership and resilience. In this respect, Hisagi can be compared to his fellow lieutenants Izuru Kira and Momo Hinamori, who were also betrayed by their captains Genichimaru and Sosuke Aizen respectively. However, what sets Hisagi apart is his deep internalization of Tōsen's teachings, which had profoundly shaped his journey as a Shinigami. We are first introduced to Hisagi in the manga within chapter 72 when he is stationed outside of the gates of the Serete during Ichigo and his friends' invasion of the Soul Society. While initially a minor character, Hisagi's popularity grew as the series has progressed, and even Kubo was surprised when Hisagi was ranking high in all of the character popularity polls. And I think this is partly the reason why he gains a significant role within the Can't Be Your Own World light novels. These light novels highlight Hisagi's inquisitive nature, which make him a perfect fit as a journalist as he works as the editor-in-chief of the Serete Bulletin. In this character analysis video, I'm aiming to begin by exploring Hisagi's personality, as we'll focus on the strong relationships that he has formed, particularly with individuals like Seijin Komamura and Kaname Tōsen. Following the betrayal of his former captain, Hisagi and Komamura are united in their shared sorrow. They are bound by their love for Tōsen and their desire to dissuade him from his path of vengeance. Following this, I want to analyze Hisagi's visual design, as well as delving into his troubled past which had led him to join the Gotei 13. Lastly, we'll go over all of the major roles that Hisagi plays throughout the various story arcs of Bleach as we culminate to his final battle against the hybrid being Hikone, where we are finally introduced to his highly anticipated Bankai reveal. Shuhei Hisagi is known for his reliability and zealous dedication to his duties. The Can't Be Your Own World light novels reveal that he is so loyal to the Soul Society that he would willingly give his life to protect its flawed system. As a Shinigami, Hisagi can be cold and ruthless towards enemies when the situation demands it. Despite his mentor Kaname Tōsen's betrayal, he does not succumb to bitterness or anger. Instead, Hisagi resolves along with Komamura to help Tōsen to see the truth. During the Soul Society arc, Hisagi seamlessly transitions from a typical lieutenant into a capable acting captain, demonstrating maturity as he takes on immense responsibilities. At the same time, he balances those duties with his role as the chief editor of the Serete Bulletin. Despite his serious nature, Hisagi is sometimes a target of comedic relief amongst his peers. His crush on Rangiku Matsumoto often becomes the subject of omakes and filler episodes. In the light novels, Kensei even jokes that Hisagi is the most likely to fall into temptation when it comes to women. His recklessness with money is also apparent, likely due to his tough upbringing within the outer districts of Rukongai. Hisagi's love for motorcycles and guitars often drains his finances quickly. Kubo in the Bleach official bootleg Karaburi Plus book reveals that Hisagi was once chased out of the squad barracks for playing his his guitar too loudly. One of Hisagi's more memorable traits is his ability to let loose with friends, as seen during his drinking sessions with Izuru Kira and Rangiku. After Aizen defects from the Soul Society, in chapter 180, Rangiku invites Hisagi and Kira to share a few drinks together. His carefree side is more prominent in the anime, where he reveals his frustrations and enjoys moments of relaxation with his companions. Overall, Hisagi is a well-rounded character who exemplifies the ideal Shinigami, while his friendship with Komamura reveals his vulnerable side, especially in the wake of Tosen's betrayal. On Kubo's official fan club Club Outside, a question was asked about Hisagi in relation to his popularity. Hisagi's popularity is evident in the number of questions that fans asked Kubo about him, as Kubo was surprised about how well received Hisagi had become amongst the fandom. When a fan asked in question 51 if there was any character which had surpassed Kubo's expectations in terms of their popularity, Kubo admitted that he never expected Hisagi to become so popular. Another fan in question 405 had asked, what is up with the line that is across Hisagi's nose? As they had wondered whether if this was tape or a tattoo, Kubo confirmed that it is indeed a tattoo and not tape. A more humorous question was asked in question 173 when Kubo responded to a question which had asked why Hisagi had failed the Shinigami Academy entrance exam twice. Kubo's short response was because he's Hisagi, which emphasizes the funny elements of the flaws that exist within Hisagi's character. His clumsy moments continue within the Hell arc when Mayuri's hologram attempts to shoot him with laser beams. In question 551, a fan had asked Kubo who would pay for the damage done to the 9th Division barracks. Kubo humorously responded that the repair bill would be submitted to the 12th Division, then the 1st Division if that doesn't work. And in a worst case scenario, it would be Hisagi who would likely have to end up paying for the repairs. Question 591, a fan had asked that they had noticed that Hisagi dislikes sea urchin, as mentioned in his Karaburi Plus profile. This fan had wondered why is it that Hisagi doesn't like sea urchin. Kubo elaborates that Hisagi had a bad experience with cheap sea urchin, which is all that he could afford on his low salary, and because it had tasted so bad, it had ruined sea urchin for him. In terms of Hisagi's visual design, he has several defining features. He's a tall, youthful man with cropped dark hair and a prominent 69 tattoo on his left cheek, which adds to his punk rock image. This is further enhanced by his choker and the blue striped tattoo across his nose. Hisagi bears a strong resemblance to both Ichigo and Kaien Chiba, and his 69 tattoo is a tribute to his current captain Kensei Muguruma. We learn more about this tattoo in the Turn Back the Pendulum arc, as Kensei is revealed to have saved Hisagi and his friends from a hollow attack when Hisagi was a young boy living within Rukongai. This had led to Hisagi idolizing Kensei, which had led him to get his very own 69 tattoo, which is located on Kensei's chest, and this was done as a sign of respect for Kensei. Unlike many of his fellow Shinigami, Hisagi wears a sleeveless shihakusho, which shows off his matching armbands and the lieutenant insignia which is tied to his left arm. In chapter 324, it's revealed that these armbands are actually explosives, adding a bit more of a tactical aspect to his appearance. In his earlier days as a seated officer, Hisagi wore the standard Shinigami uniform and he lacked any tattoos on his face, and this is in contrast to his more distinguished look that he has later on in the story. Kensei played a major role in Hisagi's backstory from 100 years ago. Their first encounter was far from ordinary, as Kensei and his squad has saved Hisagi and his companions, Torihiko and Gyuji, from a hollow attack. Following their brief but impactful meeting in chapter -104, Hisagi began to idolize Kensei, and despite Kensei's lighthearted approach to Hisagi's fear, it did nothing to diminish Hisagi's admiration for him. And like I mentioned, the emphasis is on the number 69 tattoo, as we see Hisagi gazing at the tattoo on Kensei's chest, and in the present day he ended up getting his very own version of the tattoo on his face. Hisagi also has a deep respect and admiration for Kaname Tōsen. He grew up in the impoverished districts of Rukongai, but eventually enlisted into the Shinigami Academy. He quickly rose through the ranks, becoming a highly respected Shinigami. A flashback reveals that Hisagi was the first Shinigami to be accepted into the Gotei 13 before even graduating, placing him on a fast track to become a seated officer. In chapter -17, we see Hisagi during his 6th year going on a mission to the world of the living. He was accompanied with his classmates Kanizawa and Aoga. However, things took a deadly turn when they were ambushed by hollows, resulting in Kanizawa's death death and injuries to both Hisagi and Aoga. The students were ultimately saved by Aizen and Gin, but this event had laid the groundworks for Hisagi's deep-rooted fear of battle. Later in chapter 384 we get another flashback showing Hisagi asking Tosen to dismiss him as a seated officer as he was haunted by his trauma following the Hollow attack. Hisagi admits that every time that he draws his sword or faces an enemy, he instinctively takes a emotional step back. In one of their most touching exchanges, Tosen offers Hisagi some wisdom here, explaining that it is not power that defines a warrior, but rather the fear that they experience, which allows them to truly wield their swords. This perspective is echoed in the title of the Can't Fear Your Own World light novels, and chapter 384's title, Can't Fear Your Own Sword. The poem in chapter 38 clearly reflects Hisagi's mindset. The poem reads that true fear lies in becoming a warrior who knows no fear. Tosen's calm and mature guidance contrasts with the tragic final confrontation between the two of them, where Tosen abandons the ideals that he had once imparted to Hisagi. Within a story like Bleach, where character development and conflict resolution are often achieved through battles, it's fascinating that a high-ranking officer like Hisagi harbors a fear of combat. Hisagi admits in chapter 325 that he dislikes the shape of his Zanpakutō because it resembles a weapon designed solely for killing. His Zanpakutō Kazeshini is a power-type Zanpakutō, and its name translates to Wind of Death. Interestingly, during the Soul Society arc, Yamamoto states that Shunsui and Ukitake Zanpakutō are the only dual-bladed ones within the Gotei 13. However, this is called into question when Hisagi releases Kazeshini's Shikai. With the release command Reap, Kazeshini transforms into two sickles connected by a chain, one of which is inverted. The weapon's design resembles a rotating wheel or a windmill, symbolizing the cycle of life and death, essentially capturing the essence of what it means to be a Shinigami. Kazeshini's form reflects Hisagi's rejection of a part of himself, a rejection that is born out of fear. Hisagi dislikes the weapon's deadly form, and Kazeshini manifests in this dual scythe shape precisely because it knew Hisagi would not accept it. Fascinatingly, the true nature of Kazeshini lies not in its blades but in its chains. The chain represents life, as it has the ability to bind or restore any physical injury that happens to Hisagi. This ability becomes evident during the 1000-Year Blood War arc when Hisagi is severely wounded by Lil Barrow. He was on the verge of death due to the damage inflicted on his binding chain and his soul sleep. These are two vital components of a Shinigami's spiritual body. In question 397 asked on Kubo's fan club outside, a fan had noticed that Kazeshini's chains appear to expand indefinitely, and the fan had asked Kubo how they shrunk back to normal size. Kubo explained that Hisagi consciously shrinks them back to their regular size whenever he wants. In the Soul Society arc, Hisagi's presence isn't as prominent as other characters, but Kubo still manages to highlight Hisagi's growth through a brief but impactful battle. After Ichigo and his friends invade the Soul Society, in chapter 138, Hisagi accompanies Tosen, Komamura, and Iba to confront Kenpachi. This is because Kenpachi has chosen to assist Orihime, Chad, and Uryu in stopping Rukia's execution. Hisagi ends up facing off against Yumichika, the 5th seat of Squad 11. Hisagi arrogantly belittles Yumichika, insisting that as a mere 5th seat he stands no chance against a seated officer. He even urges Yumichika to forfeit, warning of the embarrassment that would follow if a member of the 11th division were to lose. Yumichika, however, asserts that members of his division prefer to go down fighting rather than running away like a coward. Yumichika then reveals the true nature of his Zanpakutō, which he had concealed, and his Zanpakutō Ruriro Kujaku is a Kido-type Zanpakutō capable of draining an enemy's Reiatsu. Hisagi regains consciousness in chapter 156 after Yumichika has left, feeling frustrated and like he has been fooled. Hisagi reflects on how he never imagined a Zanpakutō like Yumichika's could exist. However, his thoughts are interrupted when he witnesses Yamamoto's flames in the distance, marveling at the overwhelming Reiatsu. This moment comes full circle during the 1000-Year Blood War arc when Yamamoto arrives to save Hisagi from Sternritter Ode the Overkill Driscoll Bercy. Heartbreakingly, Hisagi becomes the very last last Shinigami to see Yamamoto alive before he is killed by Yhwach. Although a subtle connection, this coincidence does add emotional weight to Hisagi's character arc, and in this moment in particular during the Soul Society arc. In chapter 172, Hisagi is amongst the captains and lieutenants who learn that they have been betrayed by Aizen, Gin, and Tosen. Later in chapter 178, Hisagi nearly captures Tosen, but his attempt is quickly thwarted. Along with the other Shinigami, he is forced to watch as the three of them escape using Negation. This betrayal forms the catalyst for Hisagi and Komamura's growing bond. In chapter 180, Hisagi finds Komamura at the grave of Kakyo, Tosen's deceased friend. Hisagi expresses doubts about Tosen's departure, questioning if his former captain will ever return. Komamura, holding onto hope, reassures Hisagi that Tosen will come back, and he believes that a stern talking will bring him back to his senses. This interaction subtly foreshadows their future confrontation with Tosen in the Fate Karakura Town arc. Hisagi reappears during the Arrancar arc in chapter 230 when he approaches Captain Ukitake as the latter watches Rukia and Orihime train together. Their light-hearted conversation provides a window into the current state of the Soul Society. Hisagi delivers the Serete bulletin to Ukitake while expressing frustration over his mounting responsibilities as acting captain of his division. He mentions that the 10th Division is stationed in the world of the living, Kinpachi is sleeping, and Yachiru has gone missing, leaving everything in disarray. Hisagi is overwhelmed, remarking that Tosen never delegated such burdens to his subordinates. As Hisagi gets up to leave, he casually mentions that he wouldn't mind watching Rukia and Orihime train in his spare time. As Ukitake watches Hisagi walk away, he reflects on how 4 months is not nearly enough time to heal from the emotional scars left by Tosen's betrayal, indicating how deeply Tosen's actions have indeed impacted Hisagi. During the Fate Karakura Town arc, Hisagi is among the lieutenants chosen to defend one of the pillars. In chapter 319, he meets his opponent, Findor Callias, one of King Baragon's Frachion. Before the battle begins, Findor inquires about Hisagi's rank and agrees to fight at the level of a lieutenant. Their battle continues in chapter 324, and it quickly becomes evident that Hisagi is struggling and he is visibly worn out. Findor mocks Hisagi's apparent lack of strength and then releases his resurrection named Pinza Aguda. Hisagi realizes that Findor had actually been fighting at the level of a 5th seat and that the Arrancar grows stronger as he breaks off fragments of his mask. Despite Hisagi's efforts to restrain Findor using Bakudo 62, he is pushed to the brink of defeat. In a decisive move, Hisagi unleashes his Zanpakuto's Shikai for the first time, cornering Findor with a series of violent attacks. In response, Findor removes 10% more of his mask, claiming that his power now rivals that of a captain. Remaining calm, Hisagi reprimands Findor for not fearing his own strength, echoing Tosen's teachings that those who don't fear their blades are unworthy to wield them. On Kubo's fan club outside in question 431, a fan had noted that Hisagi and Findor's fight resembled a tale from Japanese folklore called Yokai Kanibozu, a supernatural entity that taunts its targets with questions. Although Kubo didn't intentionally draw inspiration from this, he expressed interest in the comparison, as he noted the similarities that were present. As Hisagi gains the upper hand and injures Findor, he declares that Findor is finally his equal for being afraid. Shortly after, Hisagi is alerted to the destruction of one of the nearby pillars. In chapter 336, he attempts to subdue Aion after it attacks Rangiku and Momo. However, Aion, being a unique hollow made from the left arms of the Tres Bestia, proves to be an overwhelming force for Hisagi. While Kira heals Rangiku using Bakudo 73, Hisagi employs Hado 11, sending a current through the chains of Kazeshini in order to electrocute Aion. When Aion falls, Hisagi speculates that Kido might be its weakness, but Aion breaks free from Kazeshini's chains and grabs Hisagi. As the gigantic beast attempts to swallow Hisagi, Iba intervenes but is swiftly defeated by a Sero Blast from Aion. The beast then crushes Hisagi, throwing him to the ground, critically wounding him. In chapter 355, Hisagi is seen being treated with Komamura standing guard. Later in chapter 365, Hisagi is stunned to witness the arrival of Kensei Muguruma and the other Vizards on the battlefield. By the end of chapter 367, Hisagi decides to join Komamura in the fight against Tosen. Hisagi confronts Tosen, expressing his gratitude gratitude and stating that he intends to open Tosen's eyes and bring him back to the Soul Society. However, Tosen sees this as a mockery, doubting that Hisagi has changed as he senses that there is no hint of fear in his words. The bulk of the fight between Hisagi, Komamura and Tosen takes place over 3 chapters, beginning in chapter 384. Tosen reveals that he has undergone holification, which visibly shakes Hisagi. Before Hisagi can understand Tosen's reasons, he is swiftly cut down. Komamura condemns Tosen's depravity. While Hisagi is visibly distraught, he uses Kazeshini's chains to slam Tosen into a rooftop. Recalling Tosen's teachings from years ago, Hisagi questions his former captain's actions and asks with a pained expression what Tosen fears now. Tosen admits that he has a fear of assimilating into the Gotei 13 and dying as a Shinigami. This confession only deepens the pain of Tosen's betrayal. When Komamura unleashes his Bankai, even that isn't enough to stop Tosen, who argues that those seeking revenge risk losing sight of their true purpose. Tosen then transforms into a more evolved hollow form, proclaiming his newfound ecstasy at finally being able to see. In chapter 386, the battle intensifies between Tosen and Komamura, but the turning point comes when Tosen is impaled by Kazeshini. In a bitter twist of irony, Hisagi notes that whilst he was blind, Tosen would have definitely seen this attack coming. The irony is not lost on the readers as we finally grasp how Tosen's depravity is marked not only by his physical degradation, but also through the erosion of his sharp senses. It reinforces the theme of Tosen's moral decline, as his physical transformation into a hollow parallels with his loss of his once principled beliefs. The panel of Hisagi standing over Tosen impaling him is a powerful visual representation of Hisagi's resolve. He's no longer held back by fear or sentimentality, because in this moment he is fully committed to stopping Tosen, who is no longer the man that he had once admired. In the next chapter, Tosen awakens but is critically wounded, sustained only by his hollow powers. In a final emotional exchange, Komamura laments their inevitable conflict, pleading with Tosen not to let revenge consume him. Tosen, if only for a brief moment of clarity, asks Hisagi to come closer so that he can see his face for one final time. Tragically, Aizen brings this moment to an abrupt end by brutally killing Tosen. This devastating moment crushes Hisagi's spirit and he fades into the background for the remainder of the Fate Karakura Town arc, as the focus then shifts to the final confrontation between the Gotei 13 and Ichigo versus Aizen. Hisagi reappears in chapter 423, where it's implied that he is training with Renji only a month after Aizen's defeat. The 1000-Year Blood War arc is the final arc of the Bleach manga, where the Quincy King Yhwach and his army of Sternritter launch an invasion against the Soul Society. While Hisagi doesn't play a major role in this story arc, we do see him engage in battles with Sternritter like Driscoll Bercy and Mask the Masculine. In chapter 489, Hisagi attends a lieutenant's meeting where Kira voices concerns over the disappearances of Rukongai residents, with tensions running high as some suspect that there may be Shinigami involvement. During the Quincy invasion, Hisagi is one of the Shinigami who notices the blue flame pillar, which marks the arrival of the Vanden Reich. He soon encounters Sternritter O the Overkill Driscoll Bercy. Unfortunately, Hisagi is badly beaten even after activating his Shikai, and in chapter 503 he struggles to comprehend the vast difference in strength, as Driscoll explains that his shrift makes him stronger with every kill, as he even admits to killing Chojiro Sasakibe, which Hisagi deduces after hearing that he had killed another lieutenant. Just as Driscoll prepares to strike Hisagi with a holy arrow, Yamamoto arrives onto the scene. Driscoll, thrilled to use Sasakibe's stolen Bankai against the head captain, marvels at the fact that another weather-controlling Zanpakuto exists besides Hyorinmaru. Hisagi watches in awe, but when Yamamoto is struck by the Bankai of Sasakibe, he fears for the head captain's safety. However, Yamamoto quickly defeats Driscoll and reassures Hisagi that he will eliminate all of the Quincy's himself. In chapter 538, Kensei takes Hisagi outside of the Serete to train him in order to unlock his Bankai. Though Kensei's Bankai wasn't stolen, he warns Hisagi that there are no guarantees in the next invasion. After Mashiro holifies and injures Hisagi, Kensei makes it clear that he won't go easy on him, unlike Tosen. Hisagi rebukes Kensei, stating that despite his respect for Kensei, he still has no right to badmouth his former captain Tosen. This moment highlights Hisagi's enduring loyalty to Tosen despite his betrayal, and how he fondly remembers his former captain. Later, after the Serete's transformation, Hisagi reunites with Ikkaku and Yumichika, admitting that he had gotten lost and is struggling to locate the Quincy's due to the scattered high-density spirit particles all across the city. As night falls, the lieutenants are caught off guard by Sternritter's Mask D Masculine. Despite being defeated, Hisagi attempts to restrain Mask using Kazeshini, but Mask simply pulls him forward and strikes him. Before Mask can continue, Kensei arrives to rescue Hisagi, but humorously criticizes him for getting beaten up despite their training. This is pretty ironic as Kensei himself later fails to defeat Mask even with the help of Rose. In chapter 585, Hisagi appears alongside Byakuya, Renji, Rukia, Ikkaku, and Yumichika as they act as Ichigo's defenses while he pursues Yhwach, Hashward, and Uryu. In chapter 598, Hisagi informs Byakuya that he's taken down a Sternritter only to suddenly attack Byakuya himself. Byakuya wonders if Hisagi is being controlled or if he's an imposter, but Hisagi insists that neither is true as he reveals that he's doing all of this for someone called Pepe-sama. It turns out that Sternritter L, Pepe Wakabrada, is controlling Hisagi through his shrift. Byakuya quickly immobilizes Hisagi and discards his own Zanpakuto after it's hit by Pepe's power. Hisagi picks up Zenbon Sakura and fights Byakuya, who acknowledges that only using Hakuda will have its limits, as Byakuya is hesitating to use Kido as he doesn't want to kill Hisagi. Pepe unleashes his holy form, ordering Hisagi not to kill Byakuya, but when zombified Rose and Kensei join the battle, Hisagi tries to fight Kensei and is easily knocked out. In chapter 613, Hisagi joins the remaining lieutenants and captains as Urahara works on creating a gateway to the royal palace. During the process, Hisagi witnesses Ukitake's Kamikake ritual and later fights against the black creatures spawned after Yhwach absorbs Mimihagi and the Soul King. However, Yhwach's immense Reiatsu overpowers the Shinigami, rendering them ineffective against the creatures until Aizen intervenes. Hisagi, among others, expresses dissent over releasing Aizen from Muken, but Shunsui argues that fighting evil with evil is the best course of action. In chapter 635, as the Shinigami navigate the streets of Waharwelt, Hisagi is suddenly shot down by one of Yhwach's shoot-starful Lil Barrow. And then that's pretty much the end for Hisagi in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, as we see him again during the epilogue of the Bleach manga, which takes place 10 years after the Quincy War. In chapter 686, we see a fully healed Hisagi enjoying the peace that has settled over the Serete. In a humorous moment, he reveals that he has mastered his Bankai, though no one including his own captain believes him. Hisagi insists that he simply hasn't had the chance to use it, to which Hitsugaya comments that it's a good thing, suggesting that the peace that they've enjoyed for so long means that there hasn't been a need for Hisagi's Bankai. Hisagi's story doesn't just end here, because in the Can't Be Your Own World light novels, he plays a major role. It is here where he attains his Bankai and learns the true nature of its power. Can't Be Your Own World is set 6 months after the 1000-Year Blood War arc, and Hisagi serves as the protagonist, with the nobleman Tokinada Tsuneyashiro, who was responsible for the murder of Tosen's friend Kakyo, being the antagonist. The story weaves multiple plot lines involving the Sternritter, Fullbringers, and Hikone Ubuginu, a hybrid being who is a candidate to be a Soul King replacement. Now, for the purposes of this character analysis, we're going to only focus on Hisagi's role within Can't Be Your Own World and his character development. Following his injury that he sustained after being shot by Lil Barrow, Hisagi was on the verge of death, having suffered immense damage. In the light novels, we learn that Orihime healed his surface wounds, but the internal damage that he had sustained had left Hisagi struggling to recover his Reiatsu. He spent several days in a coma, but was present for Aizen's incarceration in Muken, fulfilling his duties as acting lieutenant, while Kensei remained in a zombified state. However, Hisagi still holds a grudge against Aizen and expresses his resentment, asserting that he will always be Tosen's enemy. Aizen, in a surprising moment, reveals that he killed Tosen out of mercy, explaining that Tosen would have fallen into despair if he had continued to live. This revelation stems from a flashback where Tosen had asked Aizen to kill him if he had failed in avenging his friend's murder. While Aizen's honesty sheds new light on Tosen's death, Hisagi struggles to fully understand or forgive Aizen's actions. Aizen Tōsen leaves Hisagi with a striking statement that resolve alone isn't enough to defeat a strong enemy. Sentimentality cannot overcome strength. This encounter with Aizen serves as a powerful introduction to the light novels, setting the stage for Hisagi's quest for justice as he begins to investigate the truth behind Tokinada's crimes. As editor-in-chief of the Serete Bulletin, Hisagi interviews several key figures, including Urahara, Kukakushiba, and Ginjo Kugo. He also encounters a powerful Fullbringer named Ora Michibane, who has revived execution in the world of the living and is working with Tokinada to make Hikone the new Soul King. As the story progresses, we learn that the Tsuneyashiro family has been secretly assassinating Fullbringers for years, as they have been harvesting fragments of the Soul King from their bodies and covering up their existence. The light novels also delve into Hisagi's relationship with his Zanpakuto spirit Kazeshini. In chapter 21 of the third volume of Can't Be Your Own World, Hisagi enters his inner world, which consists of a giant tree, a forest, and a perpetually turning windmill. This setting reflects Hisagi's conflicted soul, with the windmill turning endlessly, accompanied by the scent of oil. Kazeshini repeatedly urges Hisagi to offer him blood, but Hisagi refuses. He is misunderstanding his Zanpakuto spirit here. However, Kazeshini acknowledges that Hisagi's ability to release his Shikai and enter the spiritual realm proves that he understands just a part of his Zanpakuto at least, even if he doesn't fully accept it. When Tokinada moves to the Valley of Screams, Hisagi joins the Shinigami to confront him. It is here where he makes the brave but yet ill-advised decision to face Hikone Ubuginu on his own, even requesting to Kinpachi for him to stand down while he was battling Hikone. Unsurprisingly, Hisagi is quickly overwhelmed and cut in half by Hikone, and in his inner world, Kazeshini reprimands Hisagi for foolishly trying to emulate his heroes like Kensei and Tōsen. Hisagi admits that although he had no chance of winning, he couldn't abandon a child like Hikone. Kazeshini, in a surprising turn, acknowledges Hisagi's bravery, stating that he has always sought to be the ideal Shinigami and has in fact died countless times in the process. Kazeshini admits defeat here, revealing that he reflects Hisagi's shadow side. Hisagi's desire to be a perfect Shinigami shaped Kazeshini into a weapon which reaps life. Hisagi's acceptance of this darker aspect of himself enables him to attain his Bankai here. Back in the Valley of Screams, Hisagi releases his Bankai Fushi no Kojo. The Bankai's ability allows Hisagi and his opponent to continue fighting despite sustaining mortal wounds, effectively extending both of their lives. A noose made of Kazeshini's chains forms around Hisagi's neck, connecting to a giant orb of chains in the sky, while the reishi in the area begins to stagnate, recreating a primordial state where both life and death are suspended. This power allows Hisagi to fight an enemy far stronger than himself, as his Bankai drains both of their Reiatsu until his allies can step in to finish the battle. The contrast between Kazeshini's Shikai, which symbolizes the cycle of life and death, and its Bankai, which halts that cycle, is a fascinating duality. Though Hikone survives this fight, they are later attacked by Iko Mikidomawe, who attempts to consume their Soul King fragments. Ora Michibane intervenes, barely surviving the encounter, and meanwhile, Tokinada meets his end at the hands of an assassin within the Soul Society. As the Can't Be Your Own World light novels draw to a close, Urahara opens a portal in order to return Hisagi along with the remaining Shinigami, Arrancar, and Fullbringers back to the Soul Society. Despite everything that has happened, Hisagi continues to keep in touch with Hikone, reflecting on the bond that he had once shared with Tōsen. When Shunsui offers Hisagi a captain role due to his newly acquired Bankai, Hisagi declines the offer. He chooses instead to dedicate himself to uncovering the truth about the Soul Society and the corruption within the Tsuneyashiro family, as he is aware that this will keep him busy as some of the noble families will be resisting his efforts for the truth. Nevertheless, Hisagi faces the challenge head on as he embraces this new chapter in his life with courage and determination. I have several videos diving extensively into Can't Be Your Own World on the channel, including a complete breakdown and analysis of Hisagi's Bankai, so definitely go and check them out after this video. In summary, Hisagi stands out as one of the most complicated and nuanced characters in the Bleach series. I really love how his character subtly embodies the Grim Reaper archetype, with his Zanpakuto resembling a scythe as he is someone destined to take lives, but he is conflicted because of his his inherently empathetic nature. It was compelling to see Hisagi step up and risk his life in order to face enemies that were far stronger than himself, showing his growth and inner strength. His constant references to the teachings of his mentor Kaname Tōsen effectively keep Tosen's legacy alive throughout the story, with Hisagi embodying those lessons in each of his battles. I'm also hopeful that in the future of Bleach, especially during the Hell arc, we will hopefully see more of Hisagi's character, with the potential for Kubo to showcase even more of his newfound abilities, and hopefully another chance to see his Bankai. Now we've reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you guys think about my character analysis of Shuhei Hisagi? If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention about his character, then let me know in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next Bleach character analysis video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.